Bus driver spots boy crying every morning, checks his backpack and finds the shocking reason. The brakes of the yellow school bus hissed as Harold Carlton eased it to a stop at the corner of Maple and Pine. It was 7:23 a.m., right on schedule, just as it had been for the past 17 years. The morning air was crisp with the bite of early autumn, and a scatter of golden leaves tumbled across the street in the wake of the bus's arrival. Mr. Carlton adjusted his faded blue cap and glanced at his watch. 3 more stops, then the school, then back to the depot. After 32 years behind the wheel, he could feel retirement looming just beyond the horizon, only 7 months away. He sometimes found himself counting down the days, though he rarely admitted it to anyone. "Morning, Pattersons," he called out with practiced cheerfulness as the twins bounded up the steps, their matching red backpacks bouncing in unison. "Morning, Mr. C," they chirped back, high-fiving him as they passed. Mr. Carlton nodded, watching as they scrambled to their usual seats, already trading Pokémon cards before they'd even sat down. The routine was comforting, the same faces, the same greetings, the same route he could drive with his eyes closed, though he never would, of course. Yet lately, something, or rather someone, had disrupted that comfortable predictability. The bus rolled forward, and Mr. Carlton's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, scanning the rows of chattering students until they settled on the small figure in the back corner. Seat 22B. The boy sat alone, as always, his thin shoulders hunched forward, his gaze fixed on the window, though Mr. Carlton doubted he was seeing the passing scenery. Liam Foster. 10 years old, dark hair that always needed a trim, worn sneakers with fraying laces, and eyes that carried a weight no child should bear. Mr. Carlton had first noticed the tears 3 weeks ago. It was subtle, no dramatic sobs or hiccuping breaths that might draw attention. Just silent tears that tracked down the boy's pale cheeks as he climbed aboard each morning, quickly wiped away with a sleeve before anyone could notice. But Mr. Carlton had noticed. After 3 decades of watching children through his mirror, he developed a sixth sense for when something wasn't right. The bus approached the next stop, and Mr. Carlton saw him waiting there, a slight figure standing apart from the cluster of other children, his oversized backpack clutched against his chest like a shield. When the doors folded open, Liam boarded without looking up, his student ID card gripped tightly in his small hand. "Morning, Liam," Mr. Carlton said gently, just as he did every day. And just like every day, Liam gave a barely perceptible nod, his eyes trained on the rubber mat beneath his feet. But today, Mr. Carlton could see the telltale shimmer of tears already brimming, one escaping to trace a lonely path down his cheek before being hastily brushed away. "All set for the math quiz today?" Mr. Carlton tried again, keeping his tone casual. Liam froze for the briefest moment, a flicker of surprise crossing his face at being engaged in conversation. I guess," he murmured, his voice so soft it was nearly lost beneath the rumble of the engine. It was the most Mr. Carlton had gotten out of him in weeks. As Liam made his way down the aisle, Mr. Carlton watched in the mirror as a foot suddenly jutted out from seat 14A. "Hey, weird kid, watch out!" snickered Trevor Daniels, a 5th grader with a crew cut and a perpetual smirk. Liam stumbled but caught himself on a nearby seat, clutching his backpack even tighter, knuckles white. He didn't react otherwise, just continued to the back as if nothing had happened. "Trevor," Mr. Carlton called out firmly. "Both feet on the floor, please. You know the rules." Trevor rolled his eyes but complied, turning to whisper something to his seatmate that prompted muffled laughter. Mr. Carlton made a mental note to have a word with Trevor's homeroom teacher at the next opportunity. The bus filled with the usual morning cacophony, shouted conversations about weekend plans, last night's homework, the latest viral video. But Liam remained apart from it all, an island of silence in a sea of noise. Mr. Carlton could see him in the mirror, still hugging that backpack, his face half turned toward the window. A streak of moisture reflected on the glass. "What's his deal anyway?" he overheard Maddie Brennan ask her friend as the bus pulled away from the curb. "He's, like, always crying. My mom says his family has problems," her friend whispered back, not quite quietly enough. She says they're really poor and his dad's not around. Weird, Maddie concluded with the casual cruelty of childhood. He never talks to anyone. And he wears the same 3 shirts all the time. Mr. Carlton felt a familiar pang in his chest. He'd seen it too many times over the years. Children carrying burdens no adult would notice unless they looked closely enough. His late wife, Eleanor, had always said he had a soft spot for the quiet ones. You see yourself in them, she teased gently. Perhaps she was right. Before he'd found his place behind the wheel of bus 37, Harold Carlton had been a quiet boy himself. At the last stop before school, Mr. Carlton made an impulsive decision. As the final students boarded, he adjusted his mirror slightly, angling it to better see seat 22B. Liam had finally released his grip on the backpack, placing it on the seat beside him. But rather than unzipping it to retrieve a book or snack like the other children, he simply rested a protective hand atop it, his fingers splayed across the worn blue canvas as if afraid it might disappear. Curious, Mr. Carlton thought. What secrets did that backpack hold? The remainder of the route passed without incident. As they pulled into the school drop-off zone, Mr. Carlton watched the usual chaos of departure, students gathering belongings, saying hasty goodbyes, rushing out into the bright morning. Liam waited until nearly everyone had left before making his way forward, still clutching that backpack. Have a good day, Liam, Mr. Carlton offered as the boy stepped down. Liam paused, one foot on the ground. For a brief moment, he lifted his eyes to meet Mr. Carlton's, and the pain swimming in those young eyes nearly took the old driver's breath away. Thank you, Liam whispered, and then he was gone, disappearing into the stream of students flooding toward the brick building. Throughout the day, as Mr. Carlton went about his other routes, the high school students, the midday kindergarten pickup, his mind kept returning to that tearful gaze. He'd seen troubled children before, of course. Children from broken homes, children struggling with bullies, children battling illnesses. But something about Liam's silent suffering nagged at him, like a splinter beneath the skin that couldn't be ignored. When afternoon came and it was time for the return journey, Mr. Carlton found himself watching for Liam with unusual anticipation. The boy boarded with the first wave of students, no tears this time, but the shadows beneath his eyes told of weariness beyond his years. He slipped past without a word, straight to his corner sanctuary. As the bus filled, Mr. Carlton noticed something odd. When Trevor and his friends boarded, they completely ignored Liam. No taunts, no extended feet, not even a glance in his direction. It should have been a relief, but the change in behavior only deepened Mr. Carlton's unease. Children could be cruel, but they could also sense vulnerability like sharks scenting blood. Sometimes, the decision to leave someone entirely alone was more deliberate than random teasing. Hey, Mr. C, called out Emma Rodriguez as she boarded, her braces flashing in a wide smile. Did you hear about the fundraiser? We're collecting money for new library books. Is that right? Mr. Carlton smiled back. Well, count me in for a donation. Awesome! I'll bring the form tomorrow. Emma bounced down the aisle, her enthusiasm contagious as she waved the colorful flyer at her friends. Amid the commotion, Mr. Carlton's eyes were drawn once more to the rearview mirror. Liam was watching Emma, an indecipherable expression on his young face, not envy, exactly, but something like longing mixed with determination. Then, as if sensing he was being observed, Liam's gaze dropped back to his lap, where his fingers had begun tracing the zipper of his backpack in slow, repetitive movements. By the time the afternoon route was complete and Mr. Carlton had returned the bus to the depot, he'd resolved to keep a closer eye on Liam Foster. There was a story there, a reason for those morning tears, for that fiercely guarded backpack, for the isolation that seemed both imposed upon him and self-created. Rough day, Harold? Asked Frank from maintenance as Mr. Carlton signed out. Just thinking, Mr. Carlton replied, removing his cap to run a hand through his thinning gray hair. You ever notice the Foster boy? On my morning route? Frank shrugged. Can't say I pay much attention to the kids these days. They all look the same to me, glued to those phones. Mr. Carlton shook his head. Not this one. Something's off. Can't put my finger on it. Well, don't go getting too involved, Frank cautioned, his tone friendly but pointed. You know how parents are these days. Start asking questions, and next thing you know, they're calling the superintendent claiming you're overstepping. It was solid advice. Sensible. But as Mr. Carlton drove home to his empty house that evening, the house that had never quite felt like home since Eleanor's passing 3 years ago, he couldn't shake the image of Liam's tear-streaked face from his mind. The boy reminded him of someone, though he couldn't quite place who. That night, as rain began to patter against the windows, Harold Carlton made a decision. Sometimes, the sensible thing wasn't the right thing. And sometimes, noticing was just the first step toward helping. Tomorrow, he would do more than notice. Tomorrow, he would find a way to reach past Liam's careful barriers. Because no child should have to cry silently every morning, thinking no one in the world cared enough to ask why. The next morning arrived with a steady downpour that drummed against the roof of Bus 37, creating a soothing rhythm that almost, but not quite, drowned out the chatter of students. Mr. Carlton navigated the slick roads carefully, windshield wipers working overtime against the deluge. It's really coming down, he commented as Liam boarded at his usual stop. The boy was soaked despite his thin jacket, dark hair plastered to his forehead. He looked even smaller today, shoulders hunched against the cold. His eyes were red-rimmed as always, though whether from tears or the rain, Mr. Carlton couldn't tell. Got an umbrella, son? Mr. Carlton asked gently. Liam shook his head, water droplets flying from his hair. Lost it, he mumbled before making his way to the back. Mr. Carlton frowned as he watched the boy settle into his seat. Liam's jeans were soaked to the knees, and his sneakers squished with each step. The backpack, however, remained clutched protectively to his chest, shielded from the rain by his own body. The morning route continued without incident, and soon they were pulling into Westbrook Elementary's circular drive. Students filed out in a rush, eager to escape the confines of the bus and the gloomy weather. Mr. Carlton called out his usual reminders. Walk, don't run! Hold the rail! As the children descended the steps. Liam was among the last to leave, shuffling forward with his face drawn in concentration. Just as he reached the steps, Trevor Daniels pushed past from behind. Move it, weirdo! He hissed. The sudden jostling sent Liam stumbling. He grabbed the handrail to steady himself, but in that moment of imbalance, his backpack slipped from his grasp. It thudded to the floor of the bus. Hey! Mr. Carlton called sharply to Trevor, who was already halfway to the school entrance. The boy didn't look back. Liam froze, staring at the backpack with something like horror on his face. Outside, the school bell rang, the 2-minute warning. I'll be late, Liam whispered, panic rising in his voice. Go on, Mr. Carlton said. I'll keep it safe for you. Pick it up after school. Indecision flickered across Liam's face, a war between punctuality and protecting whatever secret the backpack held. Finally, necessity won out. With obvious reluctance, he turned and hurried toward the building, casting one last look over his shoulder as the doors closed behind him. Alone in the suddenly quiet bus, Mr. Carlton eyed the abandoned backpack. It lay on its side, unremarkable except for the care with which Liam usually guarded it. The proper thing would be to drop it off at the school office for safekeeping. Yet something, curiosity, concern, or perhaps both, made him hesitate. What if there was something inside that explained the tears? What if the boy was in some kind of trouble? With a sigh, Mr. Carlton picked up the backpack. It was heavier than he'd expected, with a solid weight that shifted slightly as he lifted it. He placed it carefully on the driver's seat, debating his next move. Privacy was important, especially for children who had so little control over their lives. And yet, his deliberation was interrupted by a metallic clinking from within the backpack. The sound was distinctive, like coins shifting against each other. Concern eventually outweighed propriety. If Liam was involved in something dangerous, or if he needed help that he couldn't ask for, someone needed to know. With careful movements, Mr. Carlton unzipped the main compartment. School books and folders came into view first, neatly organized despite the worn condition of each item. A tattered paperback. A pencil case with the elastic coming loose. Everything a fifth grader might be expected to carry. But nestled in the center, protected on all sides by the books, was something unexpected, a glass mason jar, the kind used for canning preserves. It was filled nearly to the brim with coins and carefully folded dollar bills. A rubber band secured a small spiral notebook to its side. Mr. Carlton stared, momentarily speechless. Slowly, he removed the jar from its nest of textbooks, feeling the substantial weight of accumulated currency. The coins alone, mostly quarters and dimes with a scattering of nickels and pennies, must have numbered in the hundreds. The bills were creased and worn, many of them singles, some fives, even a few tens and twenties, all folded with careful precision to fit through the jar's mouth. The notebook, when he slipped it free from the rubber band, revealed page after page of neat tally marks. At the bottom of the final use page, a running total was recorded in careful handwriting. $317.45 collected so far. And beneath that, in larger letters colored with hopeful emphasis. Almost there! Mr. Carlton turned the jar slowly in his hands, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. What could drive a 10-year-old boy to amass such a sum? The amount spoke of months, perhaps years of collecting. Each coin, each crumpled dollar represented some small sacrifice, some effort of will. Attached to the inside of the backpack's front pocket, he found a sticky note with the same neat handwriting. $492 goal. Below that, a second number had been written and then crossed out. $453. And finally, the current target. $317.45. The goal was decreasing, not increasing. As if Liam were chasing a moving target that occasionally came within closer reach. With careful movements, Mr. Carlton returned everything exactly as he had found it. He zipped the backpack closed and carried it to the school office, explaining to the secretary that a student had left it behind. As he climbed back into the driver's seat, the rain still drumming steadily on the roof, Mr. Carlton's mind was filled with questions. Where was a child Liam's age getting this money? What was he saving for with such determination that he would cry each morning? And why did he guard the secret so fiercely? One thing was certain. The mason jar of carefully counted money wasn't a casual collection or spare lunch change. It was a mission. A purpose that brought both tears and resolve to those young eyes. And somehow, Mr. Carlton knew that unraveling this mystery had become his mission too. The following morning, the rain had cleared, leaving behind puddles that reflected the pale blue sky. Mr. Carlton arrived at Liam's stop 5 minutes early, idling at the curb with the door already open. When the boy appeared at the corner, there was a moment of visible relief on his face at the sight of the familiar yellow bus. "Morning, Liam." Mr. Carlton greeted him warmly. "Your backpack's waiting for you." Sure enough, the blue backpack sat on the front seat. Liam hurried up the steps and grabbed it immediately, unzipping the main compartment with trembling fingers. Mr. Carlton pretended not to notice as the boy peered inside, checking that his precious cargo remained undisturbed. "Thank you," Liam whispered, the tension in his small shoulders easing slightly. "No problem at all," Mr. Carlton replied casually. Then, keeping his tone light, he added, "That's quite a collection you've got going there." The effect was immediate. Liam's head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. "You looked inside?" His voice cracked, somewhere between accusation and fear. Mr. Carlton nodded, maintaining eye contact. "I was concerned, son. That's a lot of money for a boy your age to be carrying around." Liam's face flushed. He clutched the backpack tighter. "It's not. I didn't steal it," he said quickly. "It's mine. I earned it." "I believe you," Mr. Carlton assured him gently. "But I'm curious what you're saving for. Maybe I could help." The offer hung in the air between them. For a moment, Mr. Carlton thought Liam might actually open up. There was a flicker of something like hope in those guarded eyes. But then the school bus's rear door opened as another student boarded, and the moment shattered. Liam retreated to his usual seat without another word, the backpack once again cradled protectively against his chest. Throughout the morning route, Mr. Carlton kept glancing in the rearview mirror, trying to catch Liam's eye, but the boy studiously avoided his gaze. The walls had gone back up, higher and thicker than before. Later that day, during his lunch break, Mr. Carlton found himself wandering the halls of Westbrook Elementary. He'd volunteered to drop off some paperwork at the front office, an errand that would normally be handled by a courier, but which gave him the perfect excuse to linger. As he passed the teacher's lounge, he spotted a familiar face, Ms. Jennings, a young teacher with kind eyes and a reputation for staying late to help struggling students. Mr. Carlton had exchanged pleasantries with her many times at the bus loop. "Afternoon, Ms. Jennings," he called, pausing at the doorway. "Beautiful day after all that rain." She looked up from her salad, smiling. "Mr. Carlton, what brings you inside today? Usually you're all cooped up in that bus of yours." "Just dropping off some forms," he explained, then hesitated before adding, "Actually, I was hoping to ask you about one of your students. Liam Foster? I drive him to school each morning." Ms. Jennings's smile softened. "Liam, yes, he's not in my class this year, but I had him for 4th grade. Sweet boy, very quiet. Always does his homework, never causes trouble." She tilted her head curiously. "Is everything all right?" Mr. Carlton chose his words carefully. "I've noticed he seems troubled lately. Crying some mornings. I wondered if anything had happened at home?" The teacher's expression shifted subtly. "Well, it's been a difficult year for the Foster family. His mother works 2 jobs now, I believe." She lowered her voice. "Did you know he has an older sister? Maya? She was in 8th grade last year, but I haven't seen her around this term." "No, I didn't know that," Mr. Carlton said, his interest piqued. "Did they move schools?" Ms. Jennings frowned slightly, poking at her salad. "That's what I assumed at first. The middle school counselor mentioned something about homeschooling, but it seemed sudden. Maya was quite popular, student council, track team. Not the type you'd expect to withdraw without saying goodbye to anyone." A puzzle piece clicked into place in Mr. Carlton's mind. "So Liam's still here, but Maya isn't?" "Exactly. It's odd," Ms. Jennings agreed. "The office just said the family requested privacy, so we didn't push. You know how it is these days, everything's confidential." She glanced at the clock. "Oh, I should get back. Recess duty in 5 minutes." As she gathered her things, Mr. Carlton asked one final question. "Do you happen to know where the Foster family lives?" Ms. Jennings gave him a curious look but answered anyway. "The apartment complex on Eastview, I believe. The one near the community hospital." That evening, Mr. Carlton sat at his kitchen table, staring at a notepad where he jotted down what little he knew. A boy with a jar of money. A sister who'd mysteriously stopped attending school. A mother working 2 jobs. None of it added up to a complete picture, but instinct told him that mason jar wasn't filled for any ordinary purchase. No child cried silent tears over saving for a video game or new sneakers. He tapped his pen against the paper, thinking of the decreasing goal amount. $492. $453. $317.45. The numbers nagged at him. They weren't round figures. They were specific amounts, like bills that needed paying. Medical bills, perhaps? The community hospital near their apartment complex. The missing sister. The desperate saving. Mr. Carlton put down his pen and made a decision. Tomorrow afternoon, after his route was complete, he would find answers, even if it meant crossing boundaries he'd always respected before. Because something told him that time was running out for whatever Liam was trying so desperately to accomplish. And Harold Carlton had always believed that sometimes, rules needed bending when a child's welfare was at stake. At 3:42 p.m. the next day, Harold Carlton was parked across the street from Westbrook Elementary in his weathered blue sedan. He'd finished his afternoon route, dropped off the bus at the depot, and hurried back in time to see the last wave of students exiting the building. Among them was Liam, his blue backpack slung over one shoulder, walking with purpose rather than joining the throng of children heading for the playground or the parent pickup line. "What are you up to, young man?" Mr. Carlton murmured to himself, hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. He felt vaguely ridiculous, a 63-year-old man essentially spying on a 10-year-old. If anyone reported him, he'd have a hard time explaining himself. But the weight of that jar full of coins, and the desperate determination in those young eyes, had lodged in his thoughts and wouldn't let go. Liam walked briskly, weaving through residential streets with the confidence of someone following a well-worn path. Twice he stopped to check traffic before crossing, and once he paused to help an elderly woman who had dropped her shopping bag, gathering scattered oranges from the sidewalk with quick, efficient movements. After about 15 minutes, the neighborhood began to change. Neat family homes gave way to apartment buildings, and eventually to a small commercial district with a convenience store, a laundromat, and a pharmacy. Liam continued without hesitation, turning left at an intersection and coming to a stop in front of a modern, 5-story building with a circular driveway. Eastview Community Hospital. Mr. Carlton parked across the street, his heart beating faster as he watched Liam approach the main entrance. The boy pulled open the heavy glass door and disappeared inside. After a moment's hesitation, Mr. Carlton followed, maintaining a discreet distance. The hospital lobby was bustling with late afternoon activity, visitors arriving for evening hours, staff changing shifts, patients being discharged. Mr. Carlton scanned the space until he spotted Liam's slight figure standing before a wall near the information desk. As he moved closer, careful to remain partially hidden behind a large potted plant, Mr. Carlton saw what had captured the boy's attention. A clear acrylic donation box was mounted on the wall, with a poster display above it. The poster showed a smiling teenage girl in a track uniform, holding a medal. Below her photo, bold lettering announced, "Help Maya Walk Again, Community Rehab Fund." Mr. Carlton's breath caught in his throat. Maya Foster's bright smile was unmistakable, the same shape of the eyes, the same dimple in the left cheek as her younger brother. But where Liam was quiet and withdrawn, Maya's image radiated confidence and joy. Smaller text explained that Maya, a promising young athlete, had suffered a spinal injury in a car accident 6 months earlier. While her insurance covered basic medical expenses, the family couldn't afford the intensive rehabilitation program that offered her the best chance of walking unassisted again. Liam stood before his sister's image, unaware of Mr. Carlton's presence. With solemn ceremony, he unzipped his backpack and removed a handful of coins and a carefully folded $5 bill. One by one, he dropped the coins into the slot on top of the donation box, the metallic clinks echoing in the quiet corner of the lobby. An elderly volunteer at the information desk smiled at him. "Back again, Liam? You're our most faithful donor, you know." Liam ducked his head, embarrassed by the recognition. "How much more till the program?" he asked quietly. The woman consulted a clipboard. "Well, let's see. The community has raised quite a bit, but these specialized therapies are expensive. I'd say we're still about $300 short." Liam nodded seriously, as if mentally adjusting his calculations. "I'll have it by next month," he promised with quiet determination. "I got a job helping Mr. Grayson clean his garage on Saturdays. And Mrs. Abernathy said I can walk her dog every day after school." "You're a remarkable young man," the volunteer said, her eyes soft with emotion. "Maya is very lucky to have a brother like you. She'd do the same for me," Liam replied simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. As the boy turned to leave, Mr. Carlton quickly stepped behind a column, his heart pounding with the revelation. The tears, the secrecy, the carefully counted coins, it all made sense now. This child had been shouldering an adult burden, determined to help his sister walk again through sheer force of will and countless small sacrifices. While other kids his age spent their allowance on candy and video games, Liam Foster had been collecting every penny he could find, doing odd jobs most adults wouldn't notice, all to help his sister when his family couldn't afford to. Mr. Carlton watched as Liam exited the hospital, his backpack noticeably lighter, but his shoulders still carrying the weight of his mission. In that moment, something shifted inside the old bus driver's chest, a mixture of profound admiration and a fierce protectiveness he hadn't felt in years. This boy with his glass jar and his quiet determination had unknowingly awakened something in Mr. Carlton that had been dormant since Eleanor's passing, the desire to make a difference in someone else's life. As he walked back to his car, a plan was already forming in his mind. Liam Foster shouldn't have to fight this battle alone. Not anymore. Not when there was a bus driver with 7 months left until retirement, a modest savings account, and suddenly, a purpose beyond the daily route. He might not be able to fix everything, but Harold Carlton knew with absolute certainty that he couldn't simply drive away from this story. Not when he had the power to help write a better ending. The next morning, Mr. Carlton arrived at work 30 minutes earlier than usual. He made a withdrawal from his bank, nothing extravagant, just $50 in quarters, dimes, and crisp $1 bills. With careful movements, he boarded bus 37 and made his way to seat 22B. Glancing over his shoulder to ensure the depot was still quiet, he slipped a handful of coins between the seat cushion and the wall, positioning them so they would seem to have fallen from a passenger's pocket. Next, he tucked 2 $1 bills just beneath the edge of the seat, their corners peeking out enough to be noticed. "Finders keepers," he murmured, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. When Liam boarded the bus an hour later, Mr. Carlton greeted him as usual, betraying nothing. But he watched in the mirror as the boy settled into his seat, and almost immediately spotted the dollar bills. Liam looked around cautiously, then slipped them into his pocket. Minutes later, he discovered the coins, his eyes widening in disbelief at his good fortune. Mr. Carlton hid his smile. The boy had no way of knowing this was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Harold Carlton became a secret benefactor. A $5 bill, accidentally, left in Liam's lost and found notebook. Quarters mysteriously appearing near his seat. Once, Mr. Carlton even arranged for the school secretary to find a $20 bill with a note claiming it had been turned in from bus 37, asking if it belonged to any regular riders. He never gave enough at once to raise suspicion, just small amounts that could be attributed to luck or coincidence. But he watched with quiet satisfaction as Liam's spirits gradually lifted. The morning tears became less frequent. Occasionally, there was even a hint of a smile as the boy boarded the bus, hope beginning to replace desperation in those young eyes. But Mr. Carlton's actions created something unexpected, a ripple effect that spread beyond his control. It began when Emma Rodriguez, the enthusiastic 6th grader with the fundraising flyers, noticed Liam helping the school janitor collect recyclables after lunch. "What are you doing?" she asked, watching him carefully separate plastic bottles. "Mr. Henley gives me the deposit money," Liam explained reluctantly. 5 cents per bottle. Emma's curiosity was piqued. "What for? Are you saving for something cool?" Liam hesitated, then shook his head. "It's private." But Emma had already noticed the pattern. Liam staying late to help teachers erase boards, collecting lost tennis balls from the gymnasium, returning shopping carts at the grocery store for quarters. She mentioned it to her friends, who began observing the quiet boy with new interest. One afternoon, Ms. Jennings overheard students speculating about Liam's mysterious money collecting and remembered her conversation with Mr. Carlton. The pieces clicked together when she spotted a hospital volunteer badge partially hidden in Liam's backpack during class. Later that week, Mr. Carlton noticed something odd during the morning pickup. As Liam boarded, Emma stepped forward from her usual seat. "Hey, Liam," she said casually, holding out a small envelope. "My mom says these are from our couch cushions, and we don't need them." Inside were several dollars in coins. Liam stared at her in confusion. "Why? Just take them," she insisted. "For whatever you're saving for." The following day, Trevor Daniels, the same boy who had pushed past Liam and caused him to drop his backpack, awkwardly handed him a $5 bill. "My dad gave me too much lunch money," he mumbled, not meeting Liam's eyes. Mr. Carlton watched these interactions with growing amazement. Though no one knew the specific reason for Liam's coin collection, word had somehow spread that it was important, perhaps even noble. The very children who had once whispered about "weird kid" were now finding excuses to contribute to his mysterious cause. Ms. Jennings quietly mentioned to the other teachers that Liam's sister was at Eastview Hospital. Soon, a coffee can appeared in the teacher's lounge labeled "Foster Family Fund," collecting spare change and occasional bills. The school janitor, Mr. Henley, started saving all recyclables for Liam, refusing to take his share of the deposit money. The crossing guard began finding lucky pennies every morning, just in time to press them into Liam's palm as he passed. All the while, Liam remained unaware of the invisible network forming around him. He attributed his sudden good fortune to a miraculous change in luck, never suspecting that Mr. Carlton had set these wheels in motion or that the entire school was now quietly involved in his mission. Mr. Carlton continued his own secret contributions, warmed by the knowledge that he wasn't alone anymore. What had begun as one man's attempt to ease a child's burden had blossomed into something larger, a community recognizing the extraordinary heart of an ordinary boy. And still, Liam never spoke of his sister or explained his urgent saving. He simply continued his diligent collection, unaware that his selfless devotion had inspired others to be their better selves. One afternoon, as Liam carefully counted his coins in the back of the bus, Mr. Carlton heard him whisper, "Almost there, Maya. Almost there." In that moment, the old driver knew without doubt that whatever happened next, Liam Foster had already achieved something remarkable. He had reminded an entire neighborhood that even the smallest actions, when driven by love, could create a current strong enough to carry others along in its wake. And as Bus 37 continued its familiar route, Harold Carlton smiled to himself, knowing the best part of this story was yet to come. 3 weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, Mr. Carlton immediately sensed something different. As Bus 37 approached Liam's stop, he spotted the boy waiting at the curb, but instead of the usual hunched posture and downcast eyes, Liam stood tall, practically bouncing on his toes with barely contained excitement. When the doors folded open, Liam bounded up the steps with an energy Mr. Carlton had never seen before. Most striking of all was the smile, wide, genuine, and transforming his entire face. "Good morning, Mr. Carlton!" he exclaimed, his voice ringing with joy. "Well, good morning to you too, Liam," Mr. Carlton replied, unable to suppress his own smile at the boy's obvious happiness. "Someone's in a good mood today." "I did it," Liam whispered, leaning closer. "I have enough. Today's the day." He patted his backpack, which for once didn't seem quite so heavy. Mr. Carlton noticed that instead of taking his usual seat at the back, Liam chose a spot just behind the driver, as if proximity might allow some of his excitement to be shared. Throughout the route, Mr. Carlton kept glancing in the mirror, warmed by the sight of Liam's bright expression. The other children noticed too. Several stopped to say hello as they passed, drawn by this unprecedented transformation in their usually somber classmate. When they reached the school, Liam lingered until the other students had disembarked. "Mr. Carlton?" he said hesitantly. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course, son. Anything." "My sister Maya," Liam began, then paused to collect his thoughts. "She was in an accident 6 months ago. The doctor said she might not walk again, but there's this special therapy program that could help her. It costs a lot of money, more than my mom could save working both her jobs." Mr. Carlton nodded encouragingly, pretending this was news to him. "So I've been saving," Liam continued. "Every penny I could find. And today I have enough. The hospital said if we could pay for the first month of treatment, they'd find a way to cover the rest through their assistance program." "That's wonderful, Liam," Mr. Carlton said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your sister is very lucky to have you." Liam beamed. "I'm going straight to the hospital after school. They're starting her first session today, and I get to watch." He hesitated, then added shyly, "Would you like to come? I told Maya about you, how you're always nice to me, even when I was sad all the time." Mr. Carlton's heart swelled. "I'd be honored." The school day seemed to crawl by. When the final bell rang, Mr. Carlton was waiting in the bus loop, his personal car parked nearby. Liam emerged from the building at a run, his backpack clutched to his chest one final time. Together, they drove to Eastview Community Hospital, Liam chattering excitedly about Maya's progress, how she'd regained feeling in her legs, how the doctors were optimistic about her recovery with the right therapy. As they approached the hospital entrance, Mr. Carlton noticed something unusual. A small crowd had gathered near the doors, teachers from Westbrook Elementary, students including Emma and even Trevor, the janitor Mr. Henley, and several hospital staff members. "What's going on?" Liam asked, slowing his steps in confusion. Before Mr. Carlton could answer, the automatic doors slid open, and a teenage girl emerged, gripping the handles of a walker. Her steps were wobbly but determined, her face a mirror of Liam's in both features and the intensity of her concentration. "Maya!" Liam gasped, breaking into a run. The girl looked up, her face lighting with recognition. "Liam! I did it, look!" She took 3 careful steps forward without the walker, arms outstretched. Liam crashed into her gentle embrace, both siblings laughing and crying simultaneously. The crowd broke into applause, many wiping away tears of their own. A nurse stepped forward, smiling broadly. "Liam, your sister has been working so hard, determined to surprise you today. And we have another surprise." She gestured to the assembled crowd. "All these people have been helping too. Your amazing efforts inspired everyone. An anonymous donor even matched the full remaining amount you needed." Liam looked around in bewilderment, taking in the familiar faces. "You all knew? You were helping me?" Ms. Jennings stepped forward. "We noticed how hard you were working, Liam. Your dedication to your sister touched all our hearts. The whole school pitched in," Emma added proudly. "Even the kindergartners." Mr. Henley, the janitor, chuckled. "Those bottles you collected weren't just random trash, son. We made sure there were plenty for you to find." Overwhelmed, Liam turned to Mr. Carlton, questions in his eyes. The old bus driver simply nodded, his own eyes shining with unshed tears. Understanding dawned on Liam's face. "It was you who started it all, wasn't it? The money I kept finding on the bus. Let's just say I know what it's like to want to help someone you love," Mr. Carlton said softly. Maya reached for her brother's hand. "You never told me you were doing all this by yourself. You should have said something." "I didn't want you to worry," Liam replied. "You needed to focus on getting better." The therapy session that followed was filled with more joy than effort, Maya's determination matched by her brother's unwavering support and the community that had formed around them both. Later, as twilight painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Mr. Carlton drove Liam home. The boy was unusually quiet, processing the day's revelations. "You know," Mr. Carlton said finally, "in all my years of driving that bus, I've never met anyone quite like you, Liam Foster." Liam ducked his head, embarrassed by the praise. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would do the same for their sister." "No," Mr. Carlton corrected gently. "Not everyone would. What you did was extraordinary, not just the saving, but the way you inspired others without even trying." The next morning, as Bus 37 completed its familiar route, something had changed. When Mr. Carlton glanced in his rearview mirror, he no longer saw a solitary figure hunched in the back row. Instead, Liam Foster sat in the front seat, just behind the driver, sharing a smile that spoke of burdens lifted and hope restored. And as they drove together toward whatever tomorrow might bring, Harold Carlton knew with certainty that sometimes, the most important journeys we make aren't measured in miles, but in the moments when we choose kindness over indifference, and find the courage to help others carry their heaviest loads.